Hello, London! Well, clearly people have had beer. I may have to follow a live technical demo, but at least you're loosened up. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and it's so nice to be able to say ladies and gentlemen at a tech demo, I must say. My name is Benjamin Newton. I'm a lead DevOps engineer at KPMG. And I am going to do a talk on, you can't do that here, which is essentially what happens when you go to somewhere like a bank, a government, someone with, data you really shouldn't have, and say, can we do CI/CD? You can't do that here. Now, obviously, we've had a lovely talk from the guys at Made, because they control their own stack, they control their own tech. Now, hands up, who here has an entirely serverless stack? Lies. Who here has an entirely containerized stack? You should be doing the talk. Who here actually has some servers knocking around that they're kind of embarrassed about and are a bit of a messy state? The rest of you are lying. We all want to get to that state of pure CI/CD, gone in 60 seconds, right? But ultimately, the reality is, we're mostly getting there. Unless you've started from the ground up in the tech space, we're all getting to that point. And when you go to regulated or legacy environments, that's harder. So I was asked to do something on a contrast of the happy path. So I'm doing a bit of how I've solved those problems. Some of them are technical, some of them are people, most of them are people. Some hints and tips about how you can, start your own journey, and just some general war stories, rants, and complaints. First of all, of course, where's the slide clicker on this thing? There we go. Space. Haha. Who am I? I suppose I should talk about myself. I trained as a barrister. I'm now in IT. I run a team of very, very smart people who build very, very complex solutions for customers. That's about it. My main aim is to make bad software faster. And the thing I'd like to point out when I do that is that speed is relative. So we just saw a demo there where we had a server go live in 60 seconds. So you guys could do, 60 deployments an hour, you could do 24 of those hours a day, you could have thousands, right? I once spent a couple of months making a release process go from quarterly to monthly. Doesn't sound very fast, does it? But that means we went from 4 releases a year to 12 releases a year. Well, 11 because December, no. Now that, again, doesn't sound like much, but that's actually over doubling the amount of releases per year. That's more than twice the amount of feature requests. It means they could actually service some customer requirements. And that was in a tier 2 bank who had some of the worst architecture you've ever seen. And we actually got that through security and compliance. Obviously, their testing cycles were not just put it live and we'll fix it later. But we got there. And that's the kind of solution I have to work with, because the thing about KPMG is we try to be a rainbow in someone's cloud. And believe me, some of the storm clouds I see at my clients, you'll understand. Now, this is some of the clients we have at KPMG, okay? You'll know them. They're governments, they're banks, they're big pharma, they're retail giants. Also, one of my biggest customers is KPMG itself. And the thing is, our team are over 100 people. We have over 200 services. Now, when I say service, one service is a learning platform that has 250,000 users per day. Another service is the customer due diligence platform for a bank that has several million requests a day. That's 2 out of over 200. And the thing about KPMG is we charge a hell of a lot. No one comes to us because they want a website built. No, we are called in when someone is going to jail if this problem is not solved. We are called in when the local IT team has tried for 2 years and got nowhere. So we're dealing with the hard stuff, the cool stuff, the fun stuff. We're constantly growing. Yes, we are hiring. Hit me up in LinkedIn. And so this is the kind of stuff we come across every day. You can't do that here. We're too heavily regulated. Anyone heard that before? Yeah, cool. You can't do that here. Our data is too sensitive. Oh, all right. You can't do that there. Security won't allow it. Oh, we'd love to do CI/CD, but god damn those security boys. You can't do that here. We don't trust that kind of thing in production. like it's illicit sex or drugs. Why do we not trust it? All right, well, we can't do that here. Our legacy software doesn't do DevOps. Who's heard that one before? Yeah. And my personal favourite, it's got to go through the change process. Got to go through change. Sorry, no automated deployment today. I hear all of these things. I hear these. And what I love, my favourite part of my job, is hearing someone say, you can't do that here, and proving them wrong. Because I look awesome, they look stupid, and we make some dollar. So I'm going to go through these things and just basically rant about them. And you're hopefully going to sit, learn a little. I might even get the odd laugh. Because one does not simply release to production. Except we do, and we will. So, what do you do when they say we're too heavily regulated? Now, I'm sure many of you have not read HIPAA regulations or GDPR in their entirety, and if you have, my God, get a life. But when you actually come down to, in IT terms, what actually matters is audit. At the end of the day, what matters is the data and the stuff. How's it used? Who touched it? When has it been stored? How long has it been kept, right? Auditing is actually 90% of the regulation work. The encryption stuff, there's a library, you can do it in 30 seconds. And if you need auditing, you need logging and monitoring. You need to track those actions. That's the key. That's what will get you through the regulatory process. And it's easier to track a script than a user. Has anyone ever tried to track user traces through Windows event logging? Yes. Anyone who has will know the pain. If you actually turn on audit success logs on Windows Event Viewer, you will blow up your monitoring system. And as an added bonus, if you're using Splunk, they'll turn you off and demand more cash. Thank you, Splunk. Equally, even if you're trying to go through Event Lure on Server 1, even if you've got consolidated monitoring, it's a pain. I mean, AD may help, but you're still stuffed. It's so much easier just to look at the Jenkins log and say, this is what we did, guys. So, my biggest pro tip for regulation, right, is one of the key points of any regulation on data is who is the release owner? Who owns this release? Now, the way big organizations solve this is they have a release manager. Who here works in an organization with a release manager? Does your release manager do anything useful? I think he might be the release manager. Awkward. So this is how they got around the problem, right? They said, okay, audit says we must have a release manager. Someone must own this process. You, Bob, you're the release manager. And that code goes into production. It breaks production and is now Bob's fault, according to regulation. What's the point in that? Bob doesn't know what the code does. Bob wears a suit. Bob only got the job because he was too slow to walk backwards. How can you do this properly? Git. The way we've done it, and the way it works really well with our clients, is you say, okay, you've got your Git commits. Every change in production is in your Git log. Whoever approves and promotes the pull request is now the release owner. Two advantages. Firstly, your who is the owner is pushed right to the left to the dev pipeline. Secondly, would you review your pull requests more carefully if you knew a couple of million was riding on it? Bet you would. Suddenly, they don't just click approve, they actually look at them. It puts more stress on those lead devs, but it also forces them to write better tests, and it also means you don't have to own the release at a later stage. Our data is too sensitive. Oh, don't hurt its feelings. Now, this is a very similar one to the sort of the regulation. They kind of come together, which is why they're next to each other. And the best way to protect your sensitive data is to let no one touch it. Not you, not anyone else. Just no one. Hold it away. Because, again, we know we have to audit who tracks it, so if no one touches it, easy to audit. How do you do that? Well, you vest that power in non-interactive service accounts. So, if you're on a Windows legacy estate, you just create one in AD. In Linux, you create a service user, and if you're using AWS, you have a nice Lambda profile running around and doing that. All sorts of levels of tech, but the main thing is the only user who can touch the data can never be logged in by a human being. Yes, that does make it harder to diagnose problems, because you can't just log in the box and see what went wrong. But you're never tempted to break something, and security suddenly go, oh, yeah, you can run that, why not? So bad examples. So if someone says, oh no, we can't do that, we can't let service accounts do stuff, this is all genuine things I have seen, and names have been changed to protect the guilty. I have seen a user doing database backups, just throw it into a public bucket. It wasn't the test database. So put it this way. Essentially, guy went, I need to do a database backup, put it to S3. The correct bucket that security had approved was too locked down. He didn't have rights to view it. So he found one he did. The dev test one. Twat. So you go, here you are, security. This is why a human should not be allowed to do that. Because if they can't do it, they'll try something creative. At least a script will just fail. DBA goes on to the live production table and he's meant to drop his temp table. Boom! Drop the live table. That wasn't sort of, malicious. That was just someone being an idiot. But if he'd run his stored procedure through a script, it would have been tested. And my personal favourite, if you've got a folder with 2015, 2016, 2017, and you're meant to delete 3 years ago data, and they delete this year's, because they just went onto the Windows server and hit delete. Now, all of these tasks, right? Database backups, table changes and schema updates, cleaning up of CRUD, they are valid tasks. They need to happen. You can't just say, we'll keep the data forever and ever. This is sensitive data. GDPR says we have to do it. But for God's sake, don't rely on a human to do it. So instead, use DAC packs for your schema changes. And obviously, that's when I've been working with SQL Server, but there are other automated words for the Oracle stuff. Use lifecycle policies. If you're on AWS and you're not using lifecycle policies for your data management, get on there. It's so much simpler. You just set up a schedule and you forget it forever. And my personal favourite is if you are still using servers with mounted drives, right? EFS or, Windows Server, literally the application service account and Jenkins, the only two users who can even read that folder. Because then you can give your ops access to that box with impunity. Because if security say, oh, what about the data? You go, they can't touch it. You try it. No one can. And again, yes, it is harder to diagnose problems. You have to fix your monitoring. I didn't say it was going to be easy. So, security won't allow it. Who here has regular arguments with security? Okay, one honest person. And who here just swears about them behind their backs? There's a lot of dishonest people here tonight. Yes. Now, the thing is, security can actually be your biggest ally. Some of the hardest changes I've got through, not fighting them, but working with them. The thing is, you have to educate them. So there's a lot of security experts who focus on the immediate. They go, right, we have a policy. We wrote the policy. This does not confirm with policy. No. You have to get them to take the bigger picture. Say, okay, first of all, that policy was written when we had a data center. We are now in the cloud. Very different. The second thing is that actually your ultimate goal, Mr. Security Man, can be achieved with automation, with those improvements going along with us. Because with automation comes consistency. And that is the key. Security love processes. They're process munchers. They'll write documents, they'll write workflows, they'll write spreadsheets. Give them more with logging, and they'll love you and they'll dance a tune, and they won't notice all the other cool stuff you're doing in the corner. But the thing you should also remember, and this is where my sort of management consultancy comes out, business drives policy. If on the one hand you have a multi-million-dollar deal, and on the other hand you have a security man, the business can technically override them. They just have to accept that risk. Now, there are some security guys out there who don't believe that. They believe they are the last bastion of saving the company from certain ruin. They need to learn their job is not to fight, but to collaborate. Let it get into production so we can make the money and pay them their salary, and then we can improve it and iterate it. Get them into the development. Get them into DevSecOps. We have our own DevSecOps team, and the results you get are amazing. It's still hard work getting them to not just turn everything off at the first sign of trouble, but you get some good results. And yes, they will never approve the tooling fast enough. Get the business approval on that one. We don't trust that kind of thing in production. Now this, I think, is possibly the most dangerous anti-pattern I see when people are trying to move to a DevOps journey, right? Because everything we've talked about so far, you notice there's not much tech there, and that's because all of those blockers are in other people's heads. It's people fearing automation. No, we can't do that. And it might be because they're afraid of the unknown or their job, or perhaps they just don't understand that a script will not suddenly destroy all humans. This kind of person is worrisome because it means they believe people make fewer mistakes than computers. Oh boy. I mean, when was the last time you saw a script suddenly get bored and stop for half an hour because it wanted to play Tetris? So my perfect example of this is someone who saw the benefit in UAT savings and missed the point of CI/CD. So we ended up saving a bank 300,000 euros a year in costs, because they had this huge UAT environment for compute hardware, just compute, and it was idle for 80% of the time. And you said, okay, why have you got this here? Oh, well, at the end of the month, we do our testing cycle, and then we need to replicate the production workload. Okay, how about using the cloud? We spin up the machines on demand. Oh, that's good, yes. And as a benefit, it means your release process is no longer installing on 20 servers. It's actually just push the new package out, deploy the new thing. Yes, we like this. So dev, no servers. UAT, servers on demand. Production, no, we'll do this manually. But why? Well, we don't know if the process works. Now, this was not a thing we put in overnight. It wasn't like a quick and dirty script. We'd spent 3 months overall talking to them, working this, getting this in. And it took them a further couple of months to realize actually this process was still ultimately better and safer than someone installing it. And the way we convinced them was wonderful. We interviewed the guys who were doing the release process currently. So, you're going to have to be the developer, sorry. So, Mr. Developer, you have 20 servers. How do you install the MSI on all of them? You say, I run the MSI on every box. He runs the MSI on every box. This guy was literally RDPing into every single server and running the MSI and copying it from a file. That's why it took him 2 hours. And I said, what happens if you miss a box? You're better than him. You can go get his job. He said, you can do it again. This guy said, it happens. A manual production release process, ladies and gentlemen. It's arguments like that, and you wouldn't believe, well, I say you wouldn't believe it. I say it and you know it's true. Actually bringing that interview transcript to the client and say, look, use my process. And surprisingly, they went for it. Legacy software doesn't do DevOps. So when I talk legacy, of course, I mean that sometimes the client chooses crud. Now, if you are lucky enough to work in a team where you pick your own stack and your own toys, then anything legacy you've got is your own fault. But at least you can improve it. You go, okay, we're using technology X, we'll move to technology Y. In the business of banks, okay, there's certain things like Swift and IBM MQ that they just have to use. It's built in. There's interbanking communications depending on it. So you have to kind of work with the joys of what you have. So there's a couple of patterns I've noticed, and I'd like to share them with you. There's the old yeller. Spoiler alert for anyone who's not seen a 30-year-old film or whatever it is. Old yeller is the family pet. He's been in the family for years. We all love him, and the little bugger's got rabies. We all know he should be put down and kicked out to pasture because he's just going to keep biting people. For those who can't follow the metaphor, that's outages. But the problem is the business refused to buy a new puppy. No, that business is terminating at the end of the year. There's no point. So who here, somewhere in their estate, has a box that's running because it's not worth fixing, but it's dying soon? Yeah. Everyone has one. Oh, we'll just leave that till it dies. We might fix it eventually. With client work, that's a pain in the arse because you have to try and kill it, which I'm coming to in a minute. Then you've got the big black box of doom. This tends to be vendor software. The guy who wrote it or put it in has gone. There's no documentation. The good news is it works. We can call the endpoint and we can get the result. But that's it. Now, if you don't touch them, they become a big yellow box of doom because they're an old yellow and a big black box. You've got to deal with them quickly before they become a problem. Sometimes, if you can work and understand the tech. Otherwise, you've just got to treat it like limpid infrastructure and literally hold it together. And then finally, you've got the one-armed bandits, which are the ones that you cannot configure programmatically. You have to go into the GUI. Pro tip, Selenium WebDriver. You can automate that. You just have to automate something going to the license key, downloading the license key, logging into the portal, uploading the license. Yes, I have done that. No, I probably shouldn't, but it worked. So, the way to fix this, generally, if you have money and time and budget, is the Strangler Pattern. Now, that is when you essentially go, okay, we're going to hijack everything in and everything out, and we're going to microservice it so we fix it. So there's a nice little picture that I've stolen from Microsoft. So essentially you put an interface in front, generally a load balancer, and then once you get your microservice to take the API calls, you mimic them, you mock them, and eventually you have a new service, and no one's any the wiser. Now the advantage of that is you can actually get rid of that legacy. And in some cases it will work, because you can then move to a nice little containerized stuff. The disadvantage is you need a dev team and budget. So we're going to come to in a minute what to do when you have to automate that stuff and you can't do that. There's the link in case anyone cares. Thank you, Microsoft. The last and the sort of key point is the change process. I love the change process. The best thing a cab can ever be is an audit of what change has occurred. That's it. And if you think you've got 10 people in a room for an hour on a change call, that is one of the most expensive ways you could ever audit something, especially if they provide peanuts. The worst thing a cab can do is just give you someone to blame. You put that change in. You were at cab. You didn't object. You may notice that you can audit things better by automating, and blaming is pointless. I mean, it's fun, and we all like, moaning in the pub, but it doesn't actually do anything. And most change processes actively hinder good governance. And this isn't just me talking now. There is a study by teams on Door Accelerate where they actively did some research and said, look, if you remove cab, things get better because people take ownership for their changes. If you have a cab, people go, it's all right, cab will look at it. If you have to put up with a change process and you can't cull it, move to the standard process. Everyone who is still ITIL, the dinosaurs in suits who snooze after lunch and run the cab, they will have a standard change process. Abuse it. Fill in that form and get it so that you can automate a ServiceNow ticket to just trigger your release. Very nice. Yeah. That's just my meme there. Now, what causes this is something called Conways Law. And Conways Law, which is quite a funky thing, is any organization designing a system will produce a design mirroring the communications of that system. Essentially, if you're building something, you'll mimic the email chains of whatever you use to build it. So if developers A and B work together, their services will talk to each other. And if they didn't ever talk to person C, they'll never talk to their microservice because they don't know each other. And it seems a bit weird, but it's actually true. If you're mimicking if you're creating a new CI/CD process, if you're not careful, all you end up doing is copying the existing one into automation. And that may not be the most effective. So evidence of this is sign-off gates. Someone who here has in their change process something that says, oh yes, it stops, and we wait for somebody's sign-off. Now, sometimes that's used as the release owner concept, but either way, it's pointless. What's this guy going to do? Just say yes? The fuzzier version of this is just, we stop the process for testing. Testing for what? Gold? Who knows? Watch out for these appearing in your new CI/CD. Someone says, we've got to have a stop here for testing. No. You want to test it, you automate that testing. You've got a damn good reason to manual test, fine. We stop the CIDC process. We do not hold for that. But the biggest culprit of all is Excel runbooks. Look at it. It's the bane of every DevOps engineer here. Who here has seen or used an Excel runbook in their life? Has anyone here written one? You've written one? Do you actually do anything for it? No. No, they're pointless. Because the person who writes the runbook doesn't do the action, and the person who does the action doesn't look at the runbook. It's like a recipe. If you've been making spaghetti bolognese for 20 years, do you look at the recipe? No. So the person who's written up this wonderful recipe for bolognese is ignored. And it's a waste of everyone's time. And that's what the release manager will do. He'll sit there on release day for 2 hours or whatever it is, emailing you, calling you, annoying the crap out of you, saying, have you done it? I need to tick my box on the spreadsheet. You're 5 minutes late. What a waste of time. Get rid of them. If nothing else, replace it with this. So I actually did this several places. You literally take their Excel runbook and do a Jenkins job with manual tasks. And it's just exactly the same thing, it's still the steps, but this time, instead of the guy, checking in, you say, all right, every person has to log into the Jenkins job and click OK. That functionally removes his job, because it's still got all the steps, it's still got all the timings, and it's actually a better auditable single point of record and failure and a point of status of where we are in the release. I mean, even that pipeline, 100% manual, is a massive improvement on Excel. It's a single point, here we are, so single point of audit, repeatability, and it also means you now know exactly what you need to audit and implement if you're going to automate it. If you do nothing else, kill those runbooks. So how do we, coming to close because I'm conscious of time, is how do we actually do those bad software things better? Make everything idempotent. Idempotent means if I run the script 10 times, it ends up with the same result 10 times. Ansible, the tool we mentioned earlier, perfect example of idempotency. It will not just keep doing extra stuff, it'll make sure it's the same state every time. Define your single source of truth. I don't care if it's TeamCity, if it's Jenkins, if it's Azure DevOps, but some form of tool that coordinates your pipeline. There are lots of them out there, and if it's Excel, then please jump off a bridge. Script the start-stop orchestration. It's the first bit of automation you can do with the legacy, with the yellows, with the black boxes. Do not have manual start-stop scripts. Once you can stop and start on demand, you can then get massive cost savings by turning stuff off and on at weekends, which is great with a couple of lambdas. But it also means you can guarantee how your release process rolls back. Because if you can't stop stuff, then you're never going to truly automate. And if you can't restart, if you've screwed up, you can never roll back. Use DNS and dynamic resource gathering. So if you're cool, you can use things like Console, or you can use Cloud Map if you're in the cloud. If you're in the legacy old world, a massive Active Directory, raise loads of service requests and get everything on DNS. The amount of improvements you get when no one's sending IPs around is incredible. And it also means you can actually start to do DR testing, do load balancing. Set up a data pipeline. Now this is slightly distinct from the proper getting the infrastructure out there. Make sure the flow of your data is consistent. So you've got your source of truth, you know your automation, and the key thing there is those config files. Because if you're dealing with legacy, what you have somewhere is a Java config file, or an XML file, or a YAML file, and that's what controls that application. Because that's how the legacy crap works. Find it, source control it, automate the deployment of that, and you'll find you can start to actually get CI/CD. We once took a system that was officially meant to take a week to deploy a new version of and required the vendor to turn up to your site, and we got it to deploy a clean version within an hour, seamlessly. Literally by copying the whole of the disk drive and then dealing with those config files. It was messy. It was horrible. Not what you should do. But we automated it. And then we said, that's all right, Mr. Vendor, you can keep your money. I've got my pipeline. If it is manual, keep those records centralized. And this is a great one for persuading people. Remember I talked about earlier about persuading the people to do stuff? A print-only pipeline. A pipeline that does nothing but print what it would do. Show that to the manager. Then create one that doesn't, all it does is run the tests. Doesn't make any changes, just runs the tests. Show that to the manager. They go, ooh, that's testing. And then the play-by-play book. It does every step your pipeline does, and then has a manual step so the manager can sit there the first time and go. And he feels like he's in control. And then you run the pipeline without those stops, and they goes, oh, that was quick. And I go, yeah, but you know what it does now. And the final slide is just lots of those things covered up there so that anyone who particularly wants to. Idempotent actions, accounts of least privilege, keep it audited, and always get to a clean slate. That pretty much covers my horrendous rant of dealing with old stuff. Thank you very much.
Awesome stuff, Ben. Thank you very much. Are there any questions in the room? We're a little shy on time. We've got about 10 minutes or so. If anyone's got anything they would like to put to Ben. Again, I know I do, but someone must do.
It was so well explained.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the pub.
I did. Is there something that you think you should tackle for if you're in these kind of constraints? I know maybe the environment might dictate what you do first, but is there like a common thing that you find that this is the kind of first thing that if I get whoever is the owner of whatever problem I'm solving to do, then I can start moving things forward?
I think the biggest key is always source control. Git is one of the most valuable tools there is, and it's so... Thing is, if you've been working in a decent setup, you don't notice Git. It's just there. You've deleted your local drive. Oh well. Your Mac's fried. Oh well. Oh, I just cocked that up. I need to roll back. Oh well. I once did a DR test where we flopped from server A to server B. Production went down. We had 2 hours of outage while we're trying to work out what the hell happened. Turns out that the MQ team had not updated the config file on the DR server for years. And you go, why? What's it meant to be? And they went, oh, we don't know anymore. Clive did that. Clive's gone. And it's things like that, just getting things known. So yes, I can always bring that config file back to where it should be. That, I mean, it doesn't solve everything, but at least means you can go back to known state. And that's what moving towards DevOps really means, is this is where I want to be. How do I get there?
And is there any specific thing you get the most pushback on? What's the hardest thing to get them to do?
I think the biggest pushback you get is when you say you're going to do database changes in production. And it's right, it's fair enough, because, well, mainly because people don't understand how databases work, and they can then break them. Yeah, but because, I mean, as we all know, your data's your currency in the modern era, right? So servers you can replace. Application code you've got. Your client data, if you delete that, is terrifying. And so to do that, what you have to do is you have to have a rigorous testing pipeline where you show them in the test environment, look, we've done 15, 20, 30 schema updates, and it doesn't matter. And of course, you shouldn't be dicking about with a database anymore. We've all realised that's a dumb idea. Your database should stay the same, and your data service should do it. So ultimately, it's only the idiots who rely on stored procedures on MS SQL that have that problem. Hopefully, you're all using something more modern. Please.
Some stuff. Any other questions in the room? Oh, cool. All right, well, round of applause, Ben. Thank you very much, mate. Well done.